Hi, everybody. You're listening to ToRAISE Questions Doula podcast. This is Melanie Headley. I'm sitting here with Thérèse Hakoun. She is the executive director of toLabor, which is an international doula training and certifying organization. Hi.
Hey. Hi, Melanie. This is Thérèse.
Hi, Thérèse.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great this morning. I'm so excited to be in our new spot.
I know. It's we moved our studio to our space.
Yes.
And thank you, Matt, for giving us the equipment to be able to.
Matt Paxton,
yes.
Thank you. Shout out.
Yes. And it's really comfortable. We're on a couch.
Yeah.
We're in a living room.
Well, I'm technically on a couch.
Yes. I'm on a kid's chair, but we won't talk about that.
But you're little.
Yeah, I am little.
It's your size.
But yeah, it's nice to be in here.
We have a great space here in Richmond that I teach classes out of, and Thérèse has this beautiful office here, and it feels very zen.
Yes, it's very nice.
Much different than our last spot.
Yes. The warehouse, the cold warehouse. And so now this is really nice. So, yeah, it feels good to be in this space and do this. We just have to figure out we're missing our mic stands. We have smaller mic stands. And
our backs might hurt later.
Yeah, that's it. But it's all good. So
you're gearing up for a trip coming up here in a little bit.
Yeah, really excited. It depends on when people hear this,
right.
But on this coming Sunday, all of my kids and their partners are taking me and ourselves to the beach for a week, which is something that we haven't done. It was part of our life growing up with the kids. It was so important to me to spend time at the ocean. It's where I always said I was a better mother. And it was just the best time for all of us. We all have the best memories, but really we have not been able to do this since the very beginning of 2000. I think the last time we all did it was together at the beach was 1998.
Oh my goodness.
And
this
so
is going to be great.
I know. So everybody is flying in or drove in to Richmond, and we're all piling into cars on Sunday and driving to the beach for a week, and it will be awesome, wonderful. And the interesting thing, I was just saying this to Melanie, is that though they, it's so different because you don't have small children, doing the small children stuff that irritates you. You have big children doing it. We will all, it will be...
with more opinions.
Yes, more opinions and louder voices, and me not being able to control it in any way. But they all love each other. I love them.
I hope Keegan will be filming some of this.
I hope that's a good thing to consider. Yeah. Because Keegan's a filmmaker. I will just say he has a film on Netflix called Cowspiracy, and I would highly recommend it, not because I'm his mom, just because it's an amazing film about the environment and very informative and enjoyable, and a huge success. Leonardo DiCaprio is the executive producer of it.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. So anyway, that's off the thing.
Yeah.
So yes, we're looking forward to it.
That's
I can't
great.
wait because the ocean is my thing, and I haven't been to the ocean in a couple of years, except the Pacific, but not the East Coast, not the Atlantic. So,
I can't wait to see your pictures.
Yeah, they'll be funny. So today,
what will we be talking about?
we have a guest that we will be talking to. Who is going to, the topic is the LGBTQ community and how we best as birth workers, as humans, support the community in birth overall and each other. And I'm really looking forward to this
so
conversation.
glad we're talking about this.
Yeah. And before we move forward, we just want to also bring to your attention again that we are supported and sponsored by Latch Mama.
Yes.
And we talk about them often and what a wonderful company they are. And Melissa, who is the head of it, is just a phenomenal human being. And so please make sure you go to their website, latchedmama.com. They have a Facebook page. They have...
Which is just another great resource,
It
too.
is a great resource. Lot of information. And to our listeners, Latched Mama is offering a coupon. And so if you yourself do not need breastfeeding clothing, please pass this on to your clients. You've heard Melanie and I discuss how comfortable the clothes are.
Cute.
And cute. And they are developing more products. You can get a 10% discount until August 31st by using the code podcast10. So please yourself use it to give out as gifts or pass it on to your clients, as I said.
That's something great to just include in your package too. Talking to clients at a prenatal. And
right.
Like, here's a little gift, 10% off.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
Yeah. So thanks, Latch Mama. And we'll be right back.
Stay tuned.
Hi, we're back, and we have our guest on the phone. We're going to be speaking with Emma O'Brien, who is a toLabor trained doula up in the Boston area, and she is also an herbalist, but I really just want her to be her own spokesperson. So hi, Emma.
Hi, Thérèse.
Hi, Emma. Thank you so much for being here, or being on the phone, I should say.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Melanie. It's good to connect this way.
So why don't you give us some background about let's just start with who you are and who you are as a doula, what your experience is, what brought you to being a doula, just go.
Sure. All right. Well, I was trained as a birth doula by ToRAISE in 2010.
Nice.
I was really young at the time. I was 20 years old, and I was one of 2 doulas, I think, in the training that didn't already have children. And it coincided with the midwife training in Massachusetts, the Mass Midwives Alliance training. So there was a really big wealth of knowledge there. A lot of people have been birth workers for years, and it was very inspiring. My interest in birth work sort of came out of activism. Even when I was younger, I worked at domestic violence shelters, and it just really struck me how many women with young kids really need support. And so I was pursuing a degree in social work and realizing that the debt to income ratio was probably not worth for me at the time. And so when I was kind of leaving school, I decided to do birth doula training. I knew a doula, and I was like, that actually sounds like the right thing to do. And after the training, I was like, yes, that's totally the right thing to do. So I also do postpartum care. I was trained as a postpartum doula by a home birth midwife in Western Mass. Her name's Michelle Esperance. She's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I was also learning about and figuring out some chronic illnesses that I had and other folks in my family have had. So I started to study herbal medicine as sort of an alternative to the medical system I saw was not quite working well for us. And I think my combination of the two also, I understand that folks have to interact with the medical system at various times in their lives, and I just want to bring a compassionate edge to that. I think with herbal medicine or with herbalism or with doula work, I think just being a friendly face, a warm advocate, kind of customizing the experience, even if someone definitely has to be in a hospital for any reason or take medications or anything like that.
Right.
That's sort of my interest in the overlap between.
So coming at it from a little more of a holistic approach, thinking whole body, whole definitely. Mind. Yeah.
And what I hear also is just that compassionate care, which is the whole thing that I think is the core and the importance of this work is that I think should be, and that's me making the should out there, be the reason somebody wants to be involved in birth work, is that they are there to give compassionate care, and everything else unfolds after that. But so I like that, and I, like so many people, Emma, I think when your pathway to herbalism is not that uncommon, not common enough, but not that uncommon, of trying to figure out how can, if the medical isn't taking care of my body, what does nature have to provide to help us? And so I love the combination of the two in practice, and it's great.
For sure.
And so then what has your experience been with being a doula now? I mean, is there our conversation is really centering today around supporting the LGBTQ community. And you were really kind enough and really open enough to agree to come on and talk with Melanie and I and to our audience about how we can best provide support in the LGBT community. And as I was telling you, as we communicated, it's something that I feel I'm very aware of and have been for years. I mean, this sounds. I hope it comes out right. I mean, I grew up in the I was born in the late 50s, so I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and my uncle, my mom's brother, we had all the aunts and uncles, and it was always Uncle Bob and Joe. And to me, that was just normal. It was Uncle Bob and Joe. And so it was years later, as I got older, that I realized, oh, Uncle Bob and Joe are gay. Like it was a non-issue in my family. So it was something I was just brought up with as normal. But I am not gay. I am not, I guess appropriately I would be identified as cisgender. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, cisgender just means if you basically identify with the gender of the sex you were assigned at birth.
Right.
So not.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, say that.
I said, so not transgender, but cisgender.
Right.
You identify with the gender assigned at birth.
Great. So, yeah. But I have a lot I'm learning about, and I have to be really honest about that. And my whole thing in life has always been, the way I was brought up, the way I believe, is meet a person where they are and let them help me understand who they are, and they will then understand who I am. So that's where I come from in, meeting anybody, no matter who they are. But I do understand that there are things that I can learn, that we can all learn about the LGBT community that would like to be heard. So I'd like to give you that opportunity, if you're comfortable with it, on, education. And I feel a little uncomfortable because of the fact that I know it's my responsibility to be my educator about this, not, people who are not me to always be teaching me, but it's really helpful if somebody can guide me and guide others.
Sure, yeah. And as we spoke about when we emailed before the show, I'm definitely happy to do that. I think, not every queer person feels that way, and I might not feel that way at certain times, but I know that doulas are compassionate, and I'm happy to be available for questions and comments and concerns and a little bit of educating along the way. Totally great.
Perfect.
Well, I appreciate that because I agree. Not everybody is always in any circumstances. I mean, I have aspects of my life that I'm very comfortable talking about, but sometimes I don't feel like talking about,
Exactly.
Yeah. People ask me questions about certain aspects, and I'm like, I don't really want to. So, or you figure that out. It's not for me to figure it out for you. And I get it. So I do appreciate that. So can you just kind of walk us through where you're at in your life, where this has been in your life as far as a doula?
Sure. Well, I guess on like on a personal level, I sort of came out to myself as queer or gay. I mean, they're words. But when I was pretty young, I was in middle school. I was maybe 13 or 14, and it definitely sort of informed my interest in activism and advocating for people, but I didn't really come out to family until many years later. I feel very lucky to live in a state and a place in the world and a time in history where I can be open about that, and I even can be open about that in a work setting, much of the time, maybe not all the time. If it's not appropriate, that's fine. But I've, in living in Boston, Massachusetts, like, we have, had gay marriage for many, many years, and other, like, queer families are visible around Massachusetts.
Right.
You see same-sex parents. There's dialogue within, if you're in, like, activist communities, about the needs of those families. And so when I started doing birth work, I felt I was a little nervous joining kind of the community of birth workers, because I guess, like, reproduction in general is seen, and parenthood is generally seen as a thing straight people do, because, that makes sense. A lot of them do it. But I was really shy and nervous about kind of my, like, politics and placing that when I was younger. And as time has passed and I've met more younger doulas who come to the work not necessarily because of births that they have had,
Right.
with this background of maybe activism and advocating for people, that I'm finding more queer doulas. And in being in the community, I'm able to connect with queer families looking for doula support. So in my birth practice, probably about a third of my clients identify as LGBTQ in one way or another. And it's something that we talk about in our prenatal care. I mean, when so often folks, they might struggle to conceive or to find, compassionate care around that, or be able to afford treatments. And then on the other end, there's even like a mistrust of sort of the medical establishment with, gender identity and transgender people who have historically been mistreated and abused by, medical providers, or misunderstood at the least.
Right. Right.
So just to have someone who they can kind of be open about their experiences, like, for example, when, getting fertility treatments or seeking insemination, like a straight couple, basically the definition of infertility is if you try to get pregnant for a year and you don't. So for a straight couple, you get to say, we've been trying for a year and we're not pregnant. We need more assistance. And for a queer couple, they might say, well,
yeah,
right. It's not happening, and often people have to pay out of pocket for a year of fertility treatments or inseminations before getting insurance coverage and things like that.
See it. Yeah.
It's really a long journey for a lot of people.
Huh.
Wow. And so what are some ways that you help them navigate that pathway? I mean, do you have specific providers that are queer friendly? Do you refer people? How do you help them, especially in a prenatal setting, like a prenatal visit setting with them?
Yeah, well, a little bit in the Boston area, we're lucky. There's definitely community health centers. Fenway Health is like specifically the LGBTQ health center. They are competent with transgender people. They provide hormones and surgery if folks are seeking that. They do fertility treatments, and for not just, queer people, but they do focus on that community and the health needs of them.
So people know that they can go there. It's a safe place for them.
Yeah, definitely. And they have a few different health centers around Boston, but that's like the main one. And so any provider in there, it has kind of built-in competency training around these things, and many of the doctors are queer themselves, and often when I'm with birth doula clients, I don't interact with them throughout their whole conception journey.
Right.
I just hear the story of it
after
we meet, and they're already well pregnant.
That's true.
And so I hear, just the frustrations, and I can say, yeah, I understand that's really frustrating. For example, the insurance coverage of fertility treatments I mentioned, they throw around the word social infertility.
Oh,
which
really?
Is really, like, kind of offensive. It's not the nicest word to be used. And so that's a word that people hear, and they're told, well, we don't cover social infertility, so you have to pay for your treatments out of pocket.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. But aside from that, I do love to connect with people earlier in the process if I can. So I do teach workshops around Boston about fertility awareness and conception and how to time, insemination so that you're most likely to get pregnant and things like that if people are trying on their own before seeking medical help.
Right.
And I'm definitely available, like, on a one-on-one basis if folks want a consultation on that. Like, oh, here's my chart. I think I'm ovulating. I need help deciding when to go for it because it's expensive. Some folks have known sperm donors, and maybe that costs them money, maybe it doesn't.
Right.
But often folks go through sperm banks, and that can cost thousands of dollars per insemination, even.
And so
people really want to hone in on how to get the most out of what they're.
Which I think, that's a great idea and great resource that you're already offering. So what I wonder, Emma, is you, like you said, you're in the Boston area where there is so much happening, and it's, pretty, there's great resources there. Not everybody lives in a major metropolitan city. So you have,
definitely not.
Yeah. So input about like how that support can be given to, how do people find support providers, medical providers that would be queer friendly?
Well, I have two resources that I'm happy to share.
Yes.
One is Maya Midwifery, so that's MAIA, midwifery.com. And that's the practice right now of Kristen Colley, who is a queer midwife. She's based in San Francisco and Seattle, but she also does online, like, fertility consultations, groups for queer parents, webinars on, insemination and fertility, and it's very thorough. And she also does, full midwifery care for families.
That's good.
And
that's a great resource.
From the beginning, been a queer-friendly practice, and they're very accessible online.
That's great.
So that's, if someone has access to the internet, definitely a reachable resource. And another resource that it's a newer resource, but there's a good amount of folks on there, is transbirth.com. And that is a listing state by state of self-identified transgender and queer-friendly birth workers.
Right.
So that includes midwives, home birth midwives, nurse midwives, OBs, doulas, and other providers like acupuncture and massage. So if any of the folks out there listening, or you, Thérèse and Melanie, are, a transgender-friendly birth worker, you can list yourself on that website.
Right.
By state,
Oh, that's
and
great.
People, can look there. Or if you're a trans person trying to access compassionate, midwifery and doula support, but you're not sure who's a good fit for you, who would understand your family, that's a good resource.
And it is a great resource. And I've had that one for a while, and I was looking at it again yesterday, before we were going to talk again. And I was looking, there's, when you look at the doula listings, it's lovely. There are quite a few in every state, it seems, listed. When I did the OBGYN, it's like, we're here in Virginia, nobody's listed.
Right.
So the word has to go out also to those who are listening, that if you know of a practice that is friendly, queer friendly, LGBTQ, they're going to give that kind of compassionate care, encourage that practice to get themselves listed on that, or ask permission if you can list them, if that's how it works as well. Because I was amazed at the limited resources as far as OBGYNs go. Midwifery care, you're going to find more of it, but some people want midwives aren't always available. OBGYNs are usually available in people's communities. So I think it is great resource and it just needs to grow more.
Definitely. I'm glad to put a plug for it out there in the world.
Me too. And the other one was Maya Midwifery. You said that was MAI Midwifery?
MAIA, Maya Midwifery.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. She does fertility consultations in San Francisco and Seattle, but also online webinars, classes for queer parents, non-gestational parents, support groups, and all kinds of stuff on there. And she also has examples of contracts for sperm donors, like if you're using a known donor, just to have the agreement of, you are letting us have this, it will not be your baby kind of agreement, just so it's all legal. And she has examples of parenting contracts and agreements for non-traditionally structured families as well. So it's a really great website. Love the practice.
That's really great. And if our listeners know of other resources, we would love you to pass them on to us. You can send them to ToRAISEQuestions@gmail.com or post them on our Facebook page. But we will have resources, notes up on our podcast website. I mean, on the toLabor website has a section for the podcast, and notes and resources will be up to complement this conversation that we have. So anything that you hear will add to anything that you send to us, we will add to that list as well. So I also just want to say that I think your fertility awareness class is really a great idea for people to consider in their communities, just because of what you were talking about, how the social infertility, quote unquote, can be an issue financially through insurance, to help somebody really understand how is the best way to get pregnant. I mean, so many people who are straight will use it to prevent pregnancy plus have pregnancies. I think it's brilliant. And something that many people are trained to do throughout the country, because I meet them in the small communities. They teach fertility awareness, but to reach out to the queer community would be really a good idea, I think, as well.
Well, and it sounds like it would offer a sense of support.
Yes.
For those couples going through it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So something to consider as well. I like that. Do you find that, when you were talking in the beginning, Emma, about your experience of being 20, and I can tell you that your experience was really common, being like only one of two people maybe in the workshop who had not had children. I mean, when I first started teaching these workshops, it was rare somebody was in it who didn't already have kids, and it would be the one or two people that would be there and they hadn't had children. Now, in the last 5 years, it's so common to me that, it can be half the workshop. The people who are attending.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. The people who are attending have not had kids. They're moved by, like you said, activism. They are moved by social justice issues, the awareness that there isn't good support out there. So I think it's amazing. I love it. And you're right. Many people who do come also identify as queer in their identity, however they decide to declare themselves. Or is that not? That's probably not right to say.
I think that sounded fine.
And so I have seen a greater population of the LGBTQ community actively working as doulas, which I think is amazing. And it's always interesting to me because, for years of doing, 20 years of listening to people's stories in workshops, people will have courage and talk. And I'm talking, 20 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, and still, of being able to say outwardly how they identify, and that what might have brought them there was that they are, that they've had an abortion in their history, and the lack of compassionate support led them to becoming more interested in the whole, not just abortion doula process, but in the birth process of giving that kind of support. That was rare and few between that people felt comfortable to do that. More people do say that out loud now and feel comfortable in themselves, which gives me hope. I think, way to go, because there are people in this room who do not agree with you, but if they are going to be doulas, this is something we learn to understand, that everybody has their story. And if you're going to give compassionate care, you're going to encounter things that you don't necessarily agree with. So as a queer doula, as you identified yourself to me in our communication, you said about a third of your clients, is that what you said? About a third of your clients are queer?
Yeah, in some way or another, at least with my birth doula practice, they do postpartum care and placenta encapsulation and a whole bunch of stuff kind of bundled in one.
Right.
But about a third of my birth doula clients identify as LGBTQ of some flavor. There's two mom families, there's trans dads, there's genderqueer birthing parents. I mean, I've worked with polyamorous families and non-monogamous folks, so it's kind of a mixed bag. And then I do have, a couple, I want to make a point about the kind of community I work in.
Yes.
I'm not sure if this is, if this is true everywhere, but in Boston, I know that they're saying that like the age of first birth is increasing in like across the country, but I think especially in a city like Boston, Mass,
right,
where there's a lot of folks are here for grad school, and a lot of people are really, focused on careers, and they wait. And then a lot of folks are over 35 when they're trying to have their first pregnancy, and they struggle to conceive. So even teaching the fertility awareness to someone who's 35, and they said, well, I've been told my whole life how not to get pregnant, and now I have no idea how to get pregnant.
Yeah.
And so I was really inspired to reach out to folks earlier, with the fertility awareness information, because a lot of even my straight doula clients conceived with IVF, and they're open with me about their struggle to conceive for many years before needing to go, to doctors and have fertility treatments and kind of see it through. So, and I've talked with other doulas in the area, and I think, that maybe I happen to have a slightly higher proportion of IVF conceiving clients. And I wanted to follow up on something that you mentioned, ToRAISE, a little bit ago about folks talking about abortions, even in birth doula workshops, and that experience. I also am a volunteer and one of the founding members of the Boston Doula Project. And the Boston Doula Project is a completely volunteer-run organization that provides free doula support for abortions, miscarriages, terminations, stillbirth, perinatal loss. And I just want to put out there that the statistics are that 1/3 of women will have an abortion in their lifetime. Mm-hmm. And more than half, the majority, over 60% of people who have abortions are already parents.
Right.
So I think that those two statistics, while it's hard to talk about in a setting, especially when you're focusing on birth and really celebrated pregnancy outcomes, like a lot of folks will experience loss or miscarriage or need to have a procedure to sort of complete an incomplete miscarriage.
Right.
And that's what I've seen a lot of in doing that volunteer work in Boston. So I think a lot of folks who struggle to conceive for a while feel comfortable coming to a doula who has experience working with abortions and loss.
I think you're right. I think you are. And we could also say, and I'm sure listeners who would say this as well, they would not feel comfortable because they would think, well, that was a choice you made to terminate. And they may have had losses that their body did, the spontaneous abortion, and they feel threatened and terrible by the, they have grief around it, I should say. They have grief around it, and they don't want to have anything to do with you because that's part of your practice. But I agree, it works both ways, and it's obviously, again, another very sensitive topic, which we could talk about on a whole nother episode. It's not for everyone, but what our feeling is with toLabor is that it is a choice that you as a doula can decide to be a part of or not. And because we believe in compassionate care for everyone, no matter what their experiences are. So if somebody wants to be a birth doula and they want to be an abortion doula, and we've been asked this question, are you okay with that as an organization, or will you still certify me if I go through your training? And our answer is yes. I mean, it's not for us to decide what you can or can't do in your practice. So just to add into what you're bringing up that I started and kind of tangential here, like I normally do, but I think they're all interrelated as far as working with communities that often are not treated with compassionate care and with respect,
Absolutely.
But so in your journey in the past 6 years, have you seen, like I have seen in workshops and just I see in life, things changing in the doula world and in birth overall with support? And I think you kind of already answered that, but in the LGBT community, however.
I do, definitely. I think with the growing population of queer doulas and folks who come to the work not necessarily because they've had children, not that there are no queer doulas who decided to be doulas after having children. I'm sure that has also happened. But,
yes.
I think just like a lot more folks bringing that analysis to birth work and saying, well, birth is not just for straight people, and birth is not just for people who have no abortions ever. And I've seen definitely a growth in the community around that. And I think a lot of that for me has to do with the Boston Doula Project in the last couple of years and working with the full spectrum doulas in the Boston area and just getting to know the stories of clients and the kinds of things they go through to access healthcare. And on the specifically LGBTQ front, I mean, we have more of a dialogue than ever as a country about queer issues and hate crimes and family and marriage and adoption and all that. So, and there's a growing list of, queer-friendly kids books that show various structures of families. And you can find lists of those and blogs online and all that. So I think there's definitely been a lot more growth, and I feel a lot more comfortable to say, like, on my website, I say, about a third of my clients identify as LGBTQ, and so do I, just so folks know if they prefer to work with someone who's part of that community, that I am part of that community, and if other folks think, oh, I don't want to work with that girl, then that's okay. You can't be the perfect doula for every person, and I feel like I do my best at the work when I can be my whole self at the work, So, and I've had it was a little nerve-wracking maybe to kind of come out into that and to say not only am I've never given birth before, but yes, I've supported a lot of folks giving birth, and I do also support people having abortions, but I do birth work and kind of they're all sort of their own coming out in different ways.
Yeah.
Right.
In terms of how people might perceive you in your practice. But I found that most folks, all the folks who work with me, pick me. And
Right. Not everybody who picks you is queer.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Right.
my question for you is there anything that you do differently in your practice
Right.
For your LGBTQ families than you would with your straight families? Is there any handouts you give differently or any talks you do differently, like in your prenatal visits or for the birth?
Not necessarily. It's and especially because at my experience at the local hospitals and birth centers in the area have all been lovely with
Good.
With same-sex families.
Good.
And I think, if I lived in a different place and there was like, oh, I know this one provider was really awkward with these other queer people I worked with, let's not go to that hospital,
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't even had to, sort of send people to or from one provider or another. I think across the board, aside from, conception and early pregnancy and like working with paid parental leave and second parent adoptions, like around the birth process, a lot of providers that I have seen around Boston from hospital to hospital have been really compassionate and, not thought twice. They see all kinds of things in the big city. And really the main difference I see is just the extra stuff surrounding the birth process. And we might do a little bit more talking around that. Like, how do your families feel? Are your parents supportive? Are they going to be around? Do you have other queer families that have kids?
Right.
As we talked about, like, the older age that folks will have a first child, I think that may be especially true with LGBTQ people because you don't just happen to get pregnant when you get married.
Right.
Like you have to really
You have to plan it. Yeah, there's no accidents.
Yeah. Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I think with so a lot of my queer clients have, maybe they have straight friends that have kids, but their kids are older.
Right.
And then they have queer friends, but their queer friends don't have kids.
Right.
And so they're struggling to kind of locate folks who are in the same boat as them, around the same age, kids around the same age, also struggle to conceive. And, I've worked with 2 mom families where their work was joking about the paternity leave. And instead of like paid parental leave, it's like, come on, like she's not the father.
Right. Right.
And so just having a compassionate ear and knowing what that's like is your family supportive? Do you have friends nearby that have kids around the same age? And I've actually been lucky to have clients sort of with babies around the same age who are queer and live nearby, and I've like connected them with each other and they've become friends, and it's just the most heartwarming thing to know that those people are able to connect and find each other in the city that maybe otherwise they would not have been able to.
Well, and I think for their
a little bit more of that.
I think for their children that's helpful too, to feel like, oh, they know it's the normal. They know it's the norm for them, but to see it in other families and go, oh, we're not outstanding here in the field. I think that resource of connection is really important for everybody, for the family overall. Do you, what I wanted to ask and talk about for a moment is words. Terminology. I think this is one of the hard things, and you've heard me struggle even just trying to talk and be respectful. I want to, pronouns, different terms. I mean, I have done I've tried to educate myself through the years and looked at LGBTQ terms and definitions, and there's so many things that I feel overwhelmed sometimes, honestly, to open my mouth because I'm afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing. And that's uncomfortable. I think that's very important for me because, and for all of us, to always be thoughtful. That's one of the things I always talk about in workshops, is being full of thought and thinking before we speak. But it also puts me on edge, to be honest, because my intention is never to offend somebody, and because I know what it's like to be offended. And so, yeah, any input, any conversation around that, Emma?
Sure. Well, I think that as far as you're coming from it, ToRAISE, saying, I'm trying to self-educate, I might slip up sometimes, please be compassionate with me. I'm definitely trying to be compassionate. I think that's all you can do as it's a learning process. Well, dealing with folks who may, frequently be mispronounced or folks interpret their gender and expression as something other than how they identify, it gets tiresome over time. And so there's a little bit less of an ability to want to educate and deal with that learning process than others. But for many, we understand where you're coming from. Everyone kind of goes through this with their own family and their own community as they're coming out. So the one thing I would say, well, I have a couple things to say. And first, I'd say that gender and sex, like on a basic level, are different things. Gender is cultural, it's social, it's the way you look, the way you dress, the way you feel about yourself, and sex is biological. It's, it's organs and hormones, and there's a spectrum of both. People say there's just male and female, but there's intersex people of various types with different chromosomes, and the same thing with genders. Like, it's easy to say both genders or opposite gender, but it's more true to say all genders,
right?
Because there are masculine men and feminine women, and masculine women and feminine men, and people in the middle who don't identify as male or female. And so when working with, especially sort of gender variant or genderqueer or transgender people, it's very important to just check, to just say, how do you identify, or see, if you feel nervous, like, see how, they introduce themselves to you and other folks refer to them.
Right.
If everyone's calling this person he and they're into that, then you can call them he, and I think at hospitals, or being a birth doula in that instance, it's some support around names. Like, if someone has a really super feminine name and that's what's on all their legal documents and all their medical records, but they prefer just to go by a shortened version, or they have a nickname, just saying, like, I prefer to go by this. Like, any new nurse that comes in the room, the doula can let them know, like, this is that person's name.
That's great, yeah.
Because at a hospital, you don't know who's going to come in. It's
right.
With an OB over months, or with a midwife for months, or with your doula, but then the nurses that day, like, you're unfamiliar to them. They don't know exactly how to cope. And checking with clients too. I mean, I've worked with folks who would definitely want medical staff to be corrected and informed, and others who just, like, let it slide. I don't care. I'm in labor. Just let them say whatever. And so it's different from person to person.
Right.
Always, like anything.
So it does kind of come back to meeting the person where they are then.
Sure, absolutely.
And not being afraid to be respectfully honest by asking the question, how do you identify yourself, or what pronoun do you prefer me to use? I mean, is that okay?
Yes, I think that's okay. In the majority of cases. I think that's, like, those questions don't often get asked to people who appear to be straight and cisgendered, and
right.
get asked for people who seem,
right.
outside of that norm. But I think that it's always better to ask than to assume. And if someone's kind of surprised or confused, you can, just say, oh, I'm sorry, I just wanted to be respectful, and then get it over with. I think that's a part of the learning process. And there's more of a dialogue around that kind of thing, like with, especially in certain communities. But I think that it's a good thing that it's expanding, to just check how to refer to someone, or what name they prefer, and what pronouns they go by.
Yeah, I think that this is part of, I think, here's what I think. I think I'm old. Actually, I don't think it. I kind of know I'm old.
Not true.
And so my hope is, as the generation that is growing up now, all of this will be just without question so much. There won't be so much question for me and for many other people, though it still is a learning curve. It's still figuring this out. And again, I don't want it to put the responsibility on an individual or a group of people to have to educate me. I know that that's my responsibility. I believe that's all of our responsibilities. It's just really helpful, Emma, this kind of conversation to have a greater understanding of what, how to be more sensitive, how to be more sensitive to the fact that people feel, we all identify ourselves in one way or another, whatever it might be. And I think I like that you clearly define the difference between gender and sexuality, because I think that's something, I didn't grow up here learning. That's not something that I learned 15 years ago, 10 years ago. People started being, more outspoken about things of that sort. But I think, whether it be gender, sexuality, or other ways that we identify ourselves, we want to be comfortable in our person, and we want people to be comfortable with us. And I understand that some people I've had encounters with some people who are just angry at me for questioning anything. And I appreciate that. It's hard for me, honestly, because it's like I'm not coming from a place to offend, but I understand that I get offended also when people come at me about certain things. So I accept that. So I just appreciate these kinds of conversations, these understandings or dialogues that can occur among us all, so we can give better support. That's really the whole purpose to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is a great conversation. Emma, thank you so much. It really just reminds me too, in doula work and childbirth ed, of just really being cognizant of using all of these, gender neutral terms too in a group setting to make sure that everyone feels comfortable.
Well, yeah, because the big change I've had to get people to understand for years and years was just stop saying husband and at least say partner. And people, and to me, that's just second nature and has been. I've had 2 husbands, and I personally hate the word. So it's always been my partner, which then all my kids said, well, Mom, this was years ago, they'd say, Mom, everybody thinks you're gay because you always say my partner. And I said, I don't care. Who cares? And they go, they didn't care either, but they were just pointing it out to me. So partner, I think, is something that is something we need to be conscious of, but also, what I have become aware of through other people who have helped me become aware is using the term, which is not, is not my first thought, is not always saying pregnant woman, but using pregnant person, talking about the people involved, not the woman involved. When I'm teaching workshops now, that has just become very normal to me, and I'm surprised. I realize all of a sudden that's what I'm saying, and I'm kind of surprised. And I will still use woman because woman is what I identify as, and what I know many in the room that I'm speaking to identify as well. And person to them feels uncomfortable. It's like, why is she saying person? So this is the hard thing, is I'm trying to meet people where they are. And when you're in a group, it's harder than when it's one-on-one, because I've had people say, I'm not a pregnant person, I'm a pregnant woman. And I'm like, I appreciate that. But not everybody feels that way. I had one person ask me who was taking the workshop who identified as a non-binary queer and had communicated with me prior to taking the training. They wanted me to only use neutral pronouns, and to, if I were going to describe what did they say? They wanted me to use the term a person with a vagina when describing somebody that I would have said was a woman at the time. And for me, that wasn't comfortable to call somebody a person with a vagina, because I see that person as much more than a vagina. So we had a really good conversation, and they had a really good workshop, and they were very comfortable in the workshop and everybody was comfortable with them. And that's how I see how things change, is I use gender neutral terms as much as I possibly can, and other times I don't.
And it sparks a conversation.
It does,
I think, which is really nice, so that you both can come to a place that you both feel comfortable.
Right. Yeah. So,
absolutely. And I think you bring up a really good point with referring to a large group and versus like a one-on-one or a smaller group. And that's the hard part, with referring to pregnancy in general. Like, yes, there are people, the majority of people who are pregnant or get pregnant are women. That's okay. Like, we don't have to erase that
right,
by including everyone else, by including trans men who get pregnant and decide to have children, or non-binary people, or, any other combination that can happen. And I think while, the phrase "a person with a vagina" is a little bit of a mouthful. It's like, there's a few words involved, but I really appreciate you and hearing that story and knowing that you did everything you could to make that person comfortable in the workshop. And I think that makes me proud to be a toLabor trained doula.
Well, thank you.
I think not everyone in the birth community feels that way, and it's really important to have places where queer people feel safe to be and to say that, and to say, don't call me she,
right.
I don't identify with that, or the majority of my practice is like this, and those people aren't being talked about. And there are people in the birth community who think saying person is offensive and bad. And
exactly.
And I was reading an article by a transgender dad who moderates an online group for trans fathers,
right,
and queer parents, and he mentioned, so there was a note online of a long list of midwives who were against using neutral language in referring to pregnancy, and one of the trans men in the group was horrified to see that his midwife was one of the people on that list, and he wouldn't, and this was maybe a couple years before he transitioned, but that particular story really struck me. Like, you think you are having compassionate care with a midwife, and then you find out a year or two later that definitely that midwife you were working with does not respect your identity or the identity of the people that are in your community.
Yeah, which is that's
really important.
Yeah, but I'm sorry.
Spaces in the birth community. No, that's okay.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize. Keep going.
You're good.
I think
I just appreciate toLabor for being that. Part of the birth community where it's more safe to be a queer person.
Well, thank you. This is why I wanted to, begin this conversation on the podcast as well. I mean, we did one early on when we started the podcast with Miriam Perez, Radical Doula, and we started the conversation. I feel like this is such an important aspect of our work. People who are listening may never work with somebody who is queer, is part of the LGBTQ community. That may be just by chance, that may be out of choice, and that's the way it is. But there will be folks who are, or who are afraid that have no problem working with somebody, but are cautiously concerned about what if I mess up, or what am I supposed to know? And again, I would just like to say that I just think what we are talking about and what you've given, appropriate quote unquote permission towards is this is my understanding, Emma, what I'm hearing you say is cautious permission to not be afraid, to communicate, to ask, to educate yourself, though, on your own, so that you are more comfortable and may, in the end, I just know everybody wants to feel safe, period.
Well, and I don't think that it's always our responsibility to introduce people as what they identify as. In a group setting as a childbirth educator, I had a woman call me the day before class and say, just to let you know, I'm in a polyamorous triad and I would like to bring both of my husbands with me to class. But if you don't feel comfortable with that, I can bring one. And, how do you feel? And I said, bring everybody. Right. Of course. This is your birth. This is all of your baby. Of course, come in. And she said, well, how would you like to introduce us? And I said, well, you're going to be introducing yourselves.
Right.
So that's, and then we will all respect however you choose to introduce yourselves in your relationship and how you identify. And, and then I just, in the very beginning of the class, just set the intention that this is a safe space and that, we are here to make sure that everyone feels comfortable, and then gave, it was their responsibility to open up the conversation.
Or not.
Exactly. And they chose to, and we had a great class with great conversations, and, the other couples in class were extremely respectful and supportive, and I'm sure some of them had never heard the term polytriad before. And so I think...
Well, and I've been to those births, and it's very interesting because their families, sometimes it's one of the things you brought up, Emma, asking the questions, how are your families, about where you're at in your life and your... do you have support or not? And, my experience, limited though it was, there was not support. So really having that, I always feel it's so, bottom line is, I'm going to give as best care as I can to anybody. But it's that feeling of, oh, you need this because you don't get this other places. And you are looked at out there in the community as literally it'd be like, oh, how weird or how gross or all of those things. And I think how sad, because these are just lovely people, like wanting to have a family. And this is their choice on how they're having their family. Not my choice. I don't care. People don't like my choices either, So I think that, so kind of wrapping this up, though, I think we could have a whole... I know what will happen is afterwards I will think of all the other things I wanted you to say, Emma, or me to ask you to go forward with. What do you want to conclude with, or is there anything you'd like to put in there?
I have one request.
Yes.
of folks doing maybe, I don't know, childbirth ed or doula training. And nothing against anyone who has said this in the past, but just to be mindful of it in the future. To be careful when you say phrases like, the energy that gets the baby in is
right.
what gets the baby out. Mm-hmm. I think that, especially for folks who struggle to conceive or maybe needed medical intervention to conceive, that is a really kind of stigmatizing comment. I think that people,
right. You don't want the birth room to be stressful and overwhelming.
Yeah, right.
And
medicalized. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's great. But where was I going with that? It just, I understand that birth is part of human sexuality. You can't deny that. There are a lot of similarities in experiences people have, but just you don't know someone's conception story. And especially for queer people, that's hardly ever the energy that they want to bring to the birth. Maybe it was. Maybe they had a great, easy conception, and they're like, and I'm going to have a great, easy birth. Perfect. But not necessarily. I
appreciate that, because that was a lesson that was brought to me not so long ago in a training, that I was discussing the postpartum period and about sex after a postpartum. And, this is me being very honest and humbled and educated, that, I talked about not everybody, just because after 6 weeks, the care provider says, okay, you're good to have sex again. Does a lot of people do not want to have sex even after 6 weeks. It just means that their cervix is probably closed up. There's been healing that has happened. They can do that. Their bleeding has stopped. And it was brought to me that, you're talking in a very heterosexual way, that, not everybody has intercourse in that way. And I thought, excellent. Thank you for telling me, because that again is something that in my life, that's how I would think. But it opens me again to just what you're saying. The energy that got the baby in there may not be the way that baby got in there. So it's considering who you're talking to and not making always the general statements. Anything else, Emma?
Well, just on that note, I think one more plug for Maya Midwifery. She definitely has online communities and webinars and classes, or has in the past, about body image and queer sex after babies and things like that. And those
that's great.
Part of the larger dialogue in childbirth ed or postpartum, support, but those exist. These people are out there to talk to you about these things.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you a lot for taking the time to talk to us and take us places, and going off on my crazy tangential way of talking as well. But I think
we kept up with each other.
I really appreciate it. And I think I'm really glad you're out there. I'm glad you're out educating. And for those who aren't in the Boston area, I know that this is can be a different conversation depending on where you live. But be the change maker then too. Help find the resources or help create the resources. I think that's what it takes. Also, that is part of being the activist in this, not just the doula, but the activist. So, again, I just want to say any resources that anybody wants to pass on to us, we would really like them, so we can post them on the page, and you can send that to toRaiseQuestions@gmail.com, and we'll be posting some of the resources that Emma mentioned as well, plus anything else that Emma, you want to send on to us. We'd be happy to
Sure.
post.
I got a couple things.
Yeah, that would be really great. So thank you, and have a great day up there in Boston.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
And for our listeners, though, if you want to check out Emma's website,
yes, thank you.
It is lavandoula.com, LAVANDOULA.com. And I know I'll be checking that out too.
I already did. It's really nice. And thank you again. And
thank you, Emma.
Take care.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye now.
Bye.
All right, everyone, and stay tuned for our tip.
We'll be right back.
Wow.
Yeah. I liked, for one thing, I will say, Emma was just wonderful.
She really was.
She's so articulate, so calm, so patient. It was just really, really nice.
And really, she just explained everything at my level of understanding it, which made me feel really comfortable.
Yeah, me too. And it helped me also to feel like, okay, I'm not totally screwing up here.
Right.
But it's an ongoing process like everything else to just learn. But I just really appreciated the conversation, and I feel like it could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
And if Emma,
we could get deeper and deeper into it.
Right. If Emma were sitting here on the couch with us, it would have maybe been even a different conversation or a more involved conversation. But we had what we had over the phone. I thought was great. And so be looking for those resources. And again, just reminding people that if you have information that you think can be helpful towards this topic, then please pass it on to us at ToRAISEQuestions@gmail.com, and we'll look at them and post them.
And we want to hear your feedback.
Yeah. Yes.
And your stories.
Yes.
So please share those with us.
Absolutely. So do you have a tip?
So I do have a tip. I am coming off of a 3-day birth, and I was very glad to know that I had kind of set this up ahead of time, which I do talk about in my prenatals, that I come to you when you are experiencing hard contractions. So when things start to get hard and what has been working for you at home, you know, just on the phone with me and with your partner, isn't working anymore. And that's when I come physically.
Okay. But in the meantime, you've been talking.
Oh, absolutely.
You're in communication with them while they're in the hospital, but you're just not.
Or at home.
Or at home.
Right.
Right.
But with this specific birth, it turned into an induction.
Right.
And so because I'd set it up previously, that she knew what the kind of how it was going to go, what the protocol was of me arriving, I wasn't in the hospital for those 3 days.
Right.
Which was really nice.
Which is a huge tip right there.
So, you know, I did not go in with her at the start of the induction. She didn't need me there then.
Right.
And I did go in and check on her a couple of times and bring food and bring snacks.
Because the induction was not moving forward in the manner that everybody anticipated.
Oh my gosh, it was not.
Yeah, we'll talk about that another time.
You know, and set up the bed for her partner and, you know, made sure they were comfortable and answered questions. And, you know, we talked through our plan, and then I would leave. And then I would still be in contact throughout the night or throughout the day, and, you know, phone calls. And then, you know, I did come when contractions did get hard. And I didn't, and she was appreciative, and she didn't feel like I was shirking any of my responsibilities, or that, you know, they had been abandoned. I was there, but I didn't have to physically be there.
Right. And so I think this is great input, because I think people get confused. The doulas, people get confused as to when should I go? Should I go for the induction? And
exhausted.
Well, I was going to say, I think most people who have done that realize pretty quickly that that's probably not what they would do again. Though I've heard some people say that their clients were like, no, I just need you there. And that's then that dance fine line you have to, one person at a time.
And check in. But then as soon as it was time for her to rest, I would go.
So the only other thing is, is it possible? You know what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
They could get long and hard and really intense for them. And in their panic, because you're not there, they may go, just give me the epidural. So is that something you discuss also?
Absolutely. So waiting to make any decisions until I get there. And, you know, I am usually there pretty quickly once they decide that they need me.
Yeah, because you've had all the time ahead of,
right. I'm ready to go.
Prepare.
Exactly.
Right. So that's an important thing. Just because you think you've got time, you still got to get everything in place.
And sometimes it's worth a call to the partner to say, I'll be there at this time. You know, this is what I want you to do.
Right.
Let's try this and this and this, and then I'll be there, and then we can talk and make a decision.
And so I think the partner is very important in this, because if the partner knows also, wait till Melanie in this case, or whoever the doula is, arrives before we make this decision.
Right.
That would be helpful, because desperation. And I was sharing with Melanie that I early on when I did a birth, this happened. I mean, I was on my way. They needed me now, and I was on my way. They knew I was on my way, and I was really close by. But by the time I got there, which was probably 15 minutes from the phone call, she had an epidural. And I felt bad. But in the end, she was okay, and she birthed. I don't even think the epidural. She felt it really, because all of a sudden she was birthing her baby.
Oh, wow.
So that I felt like should have been there, but it was what it was.
Yep.
But I did not talk to like her partner about try not to let her get this, which is a fine line also. It's like, if she wants it, she wants it. But let's wait till I get there because I can try things with both of you.
Right. Well, and I think it gives what I had been doing through the night is giving them specific things to try and specific lengths of time to try them so that they felt like they had a job to do. Her partner really felt like they had a role and they knew what to expect and then what the next step was. And so it wasn't like just flounder around until I get there.
Right.
Just try to survive and then I'll be there and take over. It was like, no, this is what we're going to do. And they had taken my class, so they knew why I was having them walk through contractions or sit on the ball or do the toilet backwards or get in the shower. So they had these tools already.
Right. Well, great. Well, thanks, Melanie. I think that's a good tip for everyone to hear and be reminded of as well. So thanks. And thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll see you here. We'll talk to you.
Well, you'll hear us
next week. Bye now.
Bye.